Hey, this is Greg Stier with an on-the-road edition of Gospelize, the podcast, and excited to have Brian Aaby, good friend. Brian, how you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
And you are you've done so much in youth ministry, from being a youth pastor to Youth Mark, right? Tell us a little bit about Youth Mark.
So Youth Mark came out of my best practices as a youth pastor. I was a youth pastor for 18 years, and probably the last 10 of it, I kind of contextualized youth mission trips, seeing everybody going overseas and cross borders and things like that. And I thought, what's the end result? And most of the time it was, back in the day, it was like you had to turn in your Discman or Walkman for the week and then go on an emotional mission trip, come home and go like, oh, it was a great experience, but can I have my now iPhone back, and didn't see any transformation taking place. So we contextualized in youth ministry by going into rural America, because I thought instead of step down, step away and teach little kids VBS or soccer and stuff like that, thought how can I get my students into peer-to-peer relationship where they're actually sharing their faith. So we went into rural places in America and equipped students with evangelism. So every place that we went, we'd basically tell people to gather at the football field tonight at 6, and they're like, why? And I'm like, well, because we're here. Towns of 1,500, 2,000, we'd get 50, 60, 70 kids from that community. Wow. Nothing else was going on. So our students came back with confidence, having shared their faith in a small town in America. They can come back to their suburban or urban high school and had confidence. And my youth groups grew and flourished. So I created an organization, Youth Mark, that concentrated on what we called Mission 51, training for the 51 weeks of life outside of the mission trip. So we created curriculum that walked through the book of Acts, training the students basically that we are that messenger for Christ now. And the early church kind of looked at what they did prescription-wise and just contextualized it for today.
I love that. And that's kind of when we first connected. I mean, that's what we were connected over. And really a like philosophy of, that Mission 51. And so many teenagers today, they check the mission trip on the list. Okay, exactly. Did my outreach event for the year. Yep. But every day they're surrounded by kids that desperately need Christ.
Exactly. So it was, instead of us seeing it like as a kind of a reward, that for our summer, we, after a year of training, whatever, we saw it as the catalyst that propelled the next year. Yeah. So like this actually, the mission trip itself was the training grounds for what you're actually going to be doing in your own neighborhood. Because if you look at the book of Acts, in 1:8, when Jesus says Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost, the first 8 chapters, you never see one of the apostles outside of Jerusalem. So I thought, if the apostles contextualized by applying it to their own Jerusalem, why shouldn't we? So if God ever calls us to the uttermost, awesome. But most likely, you're supposed to be called to your own neighborhood.
So how would youth leaders find out more information about?
Just go to youthmark.com, and I don't think we've updated the website in forever, but that's okay. Just contact me. We'll figure out an even better deal than what's listed there anyway, because the stuff it's not so old. It's not very, it's evergreen that way, that it's just going through the book of Acts. But it's not my primary source of income, so I'm not motivated by the sales. I'm motivated by the impact, and we want to help. We want to help groups.
I mean, a lot of youth groups spend a lot of money on doing across the seas mission trips, and we're pro across the seas mission trips, but you could really be across the street or across the state at a lot lower price and have a lot higher impact, because it's really about Mission 51.
It is.
And so just check out youthmark.com, get more information about that. You and I we connected on several different levels, kind of our fundamental belief in teenagers and the potential for the gospel, but also the importance of the clear message of God's grace, that we are articulating the gospel fluently and clearly. Why do you think that's important in this day and age?
Oh man, I mean, honestly, we talked about this over coffee earlier. John 10:10, the thief has come to kill, steal, and destroy, but he's come that we might have life. And everything that students are being bombarded with right now is just confusion of the enemy. In terms of even the idea of being alone and suicide and depression, all those types of things, I think come as a result of what the evil one has done to distort the view of what our purpose is, and that is to make disciples. And so to me, I think a lot of worth and where the students are, when they discover their giftings, when they discover, and even leadership is such a misnomer, because students are thinking like, I have to be up front, I have to be the man, the woman, or whatever it's, but you think of 1 Corinthians 12 and one body, many parts, when we can actually discover who we are in Christ, what we're gifted to do, and that we're supposed to be a part of a body. Think of 1 Corinthians 1 when Paul is addressing Corinth, and he says, you've been enriched in every way for a life of righteousness. We look at that and go, but I haven't been gifted in every way. He's talking to the body of believers there. Now he's saying you're holy, sanctified, set apart. It takes 15 chapters to say you're not living that, but at the beginning he names who they are. And if students begin to understand that they are sanctified, we can begin to act sanctified, act out of our sanctification, and almost a reaction to God's grace, and going, man, I've been given grace. I want to give grace to others and to live into that free grace that God has given us, and to see what part you play in that. So we need people to lead in mercy. We need people to lead in hospitality. We need people to lead in teaching. But all of us have been called to do the work of an evangelist. So even though I'm not gifted in evangelism, and it literally is not my number one, it's in my top 3 still, but I'm called to do that. I'm called to show mercy. That doesn't show up on my spiritual gifts list. I don't have it.
Me neither. But I really do think that whole concept of that being a response to the grace of God, and it's how we contribute. And when students feel that I'm part of this collective effort, they don't feel alone. They're fueled by grace, not by law, not by trying to earn their salvation or keep their salvation or even prove their salvation, but because they're thankful for the salvation. And then it's a team sport. We're going together.
I think we've forgotten that it's not just that the gospel saves, the gospel transforms. Ultimately, it is like we're going to trust God for salvation, but we also have to trust Him in the sanctification process, and it transforms us.
So your journey's been a pretty crazy journey. I mean, you've spent time youth leader. You've been Youth Mark. You've done Youth Specialties. We're here at actually Youth Specialties National Youth Workers Convention, and now you're working with a group called Slingshot. So, killing giants.
There you go.
Tell us a little bit about Slingshot.
So Slingshot, and even my role with YS, what I was called to do with YS was coaching and doing placements. So kind of the eHarmony for the church and a youth pastor. I help churches when they're in the time of transition between youth leaders. And so youth leaders are out there that are thinking, man, I think it's time to become a youth pastor, or I'm looking for a new place or whatever. I'm a great person to contact, because that's my role with Slingshot now. I went over to Slingshot and working with churches with not just the coaching of youth pastors, but even the placements of them in the whole next gen lane. So I get to work with anywhere from probably 20 to 30 churches exclusively each year on helping them bring in that now gospel-oriented youth pastor who's going, man, I want to see transformational work of the gospel in such and such church. And then I get to work with on the coaching side as well. And that's really kind of helping somebody move from A to B, B to C, C to D. Sometimes you're just feeling stuck. And the beauty of it, Greg, is that my own personal DNA and how I bleed out the gospel is like I get to be an influence in those lives. And so my passion is still Mission 51, but the contextualization for it is I'm really good at connecting and networking, and so I'm able to capitalize on both of those now.
And I think also help coach and guide pastors and church leaders as well as youth leaders. Hey, this is the kind of youth ministry you want to have to thrive. So it's really cool. And then you're also involved with this Christian School Initiative with Tim Eldred. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Tim and I have been doing stuff, just side projects for years, and so one of these things that we just kind of happened upon, Association Christian Schools International, ACSI, worked with us about 6 years ago and said, hey, can you do these one-day leadership conferences for middle school students? So about every day for those 6 days straight, about 8 to 10 schools bring about 8 to 15 students each converge on for a one-day conference where we teach middle school leadership, basically 1 Corinthians 12, helping understand who they are in Christ, and then how they can make an impact in their community, in their own schools, in their own churches. So about 5 years ago we did 6, and then that changed to 10, and then 17 of these. And next year we're gonna be doing close to 25 throughout the country. So it's awesome. I love middle schoolers.
You basically get 8 to 10 Christian schools from an area
Yep.
to kind of send their best of the best.
Yeah, so when we come to Denver next year, we'll probably have 8 to 10 schools from that greater Colorado Springs to North Denver area that will converge, at one of the Christian schools there with 8 to 10 of their students.
Yeah.
The leadership kids, basically.
Yeah.
Could be their ASB, could be just kids that were elected, whatever. And we spend a whole day with them, helping them discover their own giftedness, their own character traits, who God's made them to be, and then how they can team together to make an impact on their community. Christian schools are loving it because it really is kind of a development thing, where they then make an impact in their community, and then the school goes, and people in the community go, oh man, that school is making a difference.
Well, and I know this, my kids both go to a Christian school. If you have a core of Christian teenagers in that school that are on fire for Christ, it becomes a thermostat for the rest of the school. If you don't, then it gets cool spiritually. And so really, really important.
It only takes 10%, man.
10%. The 10% rule. So how would people find out more information about Slingshot, but also about this Christian school initiative?
Yeah, so slingshotgroup.org is the Slingshot website. And then, honestly, the middle school leadership one, you can look up stuff through ACSI, but leaderwalk.com we branded LeaderWalk. So leaderwalk.com has all the information. What we do, Tim and I do with the ACSI schools, we do for churches as well. So we do a one day, a Saturday, all day. And we've had a few churches because we did the schools. The churches have come and said, "Hey, we want to do this."
So not just Christian schools, but also the church. So leaderwalk.com.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
Any parting words, or?
I just want to encourage youth leaders that are listening to this, continue to check out this podcast, continue to be encouraged by the resources Dare to Share. Such a great partnership that Greg and I have, and excited that I've had the opportunity to be on here with you.
All right, brother. Thanks so much, Brian Aaby. I like using your first name and your last.
Thanks.
That's all I've got to say about that.
Awkward is awesome, Greg.
Awkward is awesome. That's where I live.